You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. Learn about hoarding disorder from me, somebody who has it. I promote a better understanding of hoarding disorder, a stigmatised mental health condition that is mocked rather than treated with compassion. I want to change that, and by talking openly and honestly about hoarding, I hope to start conversations that help. Find out how to support the podcast at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. So I am here with Dr. Jan Eppingstall, a therapist in Melbourne, Australia, who specialises in working with people who hoard. Jan, how are you today?
I'm fired up. I'm ready for this exciting podcast discussion that we're going to have today. Thank you for asking.
Do you need a permission slip?
I believe you are wanting a permission slip today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeedy do. Now, I'm holding up a portrait, a photographic portrait of me with a pensive look, with a very fabulous looking velvet headband that I had taken on my 18th birthday, although I believe I was 20 because I tried to avoid it for as long as possible. Because I did not want to do the fantasy photography stuff my parents wanted, but they forced the issue. So this one here is the pensive floral shirt.
Very beautiful.
All beautifully framed, probably cost a fortune. And then the other one is another pensive portrait of me. My nails look really good. I will give myself that.
Great hat.
The hat is great. I am a hat wearer. I wear hats particularly well, I have been told.
I would go so far as to say dapper.
And I was wearing my favourite jacket that day. It was a two-tone jacket. It had like a dark hunter green sleeves and then I think a black collar. Yes. So sleeves and the main part of it. I love that jacket. It was great. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't fit, and B, it wouldn't still be, wearable. But I loved it. But really, I'm never going to put them up.
Yeah.
I cringe when I look at them, and I just really I want to let them go. But I'm working up to it by thinking if I could open the back of them and I could get the photo out, would that make me feel less guilty about parting with something that my mother, my father, my family had up on the wall for a very long time?
When I interviewed Harriet Impey in episode 172, she talked about something that I found really interesting, which is that we were talking about how objects can be significant memories without being happy memories.
Oh.
And the way she worded it that really stuck with me is that, and this may not be the case with these photos, but that some objects glower at you. And why are we keeping objects that glower at us? And that is, I've thought about that ever since, because I have some objects that glower at me. But even if those photos, and they're very beautiful framed portraits, professionally taken, all of that, they may not glower at you, but it feels maybe like they are significant associations for you, while not necessarily being, oh, that makes me really happy to look at.
Not at all. And also that time, when I think back to that time, I was a very insecure person. I was really struggling at that point. And I look at it and I kind of go, yeah, I can see that in my eyes. And that makes me, I think that's what puts me off the most, is I don't appear to be very confident or sure of myself. And when I look at it, I kind of feel like I'm back there. It's almost like a teleportation. So I do feel that you're right. I think it's a time gone by. I have one portrait that I actually do like, and I feel happy looking at, although it is not on the wall and it is under the stairs. But at least I feel like if I was older, that's one of the things people have said to me, oh, but what about when you're wrinkly and old and won't you want to see those? Like, really? I mean, they're not really, no.
No, especially if you look at them and remember feeling a bit awkward and a bit like uncomfortable, you'd probably, when you're wrinkly and old, a good 40 years away.
You sure?
Rather look at a photo of you laughing with your friends or a photo of, of you feeling natural and actually happy rather than in an awkward situation that felt profoundly uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly. It did. And it did. I hate having my photo taken. And especially in those types of situations where you have to pose. It's horrid. And I have avoided photos like the plague. And those were forced upon me. And my mother doesn't remember them now anyway. So.
And you mentioned thinking about kind of taking the photos out. If you could, how would that be different?
It would make me feel less guilty about not knowing whether I'd want them in the future. So it's my whole uncertainty. What if I wish I had kept those photographs or, for my children or something. I don't know, but that's what would make it different, is that I would feel that one step less guilty. I know I don't want to keep them as they are because I'm never putting them on the wall, ever.
And they're quite sizable, like they take up space.
Yes, exactly. They're not little frames and they're sort of not attractive, not frames I would choose. And I remember my dad liked one in particular and I really didn't like it. That one with the headband. He really liked that one because he was a bit of a photographer himself. And I said, oh, no, I don't like that one. He's like, oh, no, I really like it. I want to get that one. And it was probably in his office or something. It was probably up on his office wall. And I was probably mortified that everyone at his work was looking at it, I'm sure. But, yeah, they're sizable. But if I was able to take the photo out, what I would probably do is scan it and then throw it in the bin. That's what I would probably eventually do to kind of still preserve
something of it. And I guess the dilemma is that the current situation is that those frames are sealed stronger than a safe.
They're fully, seriously, I have to get a tool, more than one, to get them unstapled. I don't know how the hell. That must have been a very good framer. I've got the name and number there on the back. I can go and visit them in Preston. And
it makes sense that if you could take the photos out and scan them, then that would solve some of that problem.
Yes.
But if you can't take the photos out,
I can't bring myself to put them into the bin because I don't want to send them to charity
with your face in.
With my face in. So that's the that's the dilemma. So I'm going, but it seems so bad to just throw out the frame. But either I'm going to be in landfill or I'm going to be on the shelf at the local, St. Vinny's.
Smiling happily at everybody.
Smiling unhappily. Neither of them. I'm not smiling in either of them, and none of the photos there was any smiling. I must have either not looked good smiling or they never asked me to smile. I'm not sure which. So that's another dilemma, is if I wasn't to take the photos out, what method of disposal would be the most appropriate?
Okay, I'm going to throw something out, not because I'm suggesting it, but just to see how it lands. What if you just smash them up all together?
Yes.
Smash your way through the glass, get the photo out. Cathartic smashing of the entire thing.
That would be so good. Yes. I think that's a genius plan, because I've been wanting to go to one of those smash it up places where you just show up. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you for the permission for me to smash those up, because it will feel really cathartic.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I have dreams now of that. Thank you very much.
Because I know sometimes if I have something like, say, I have the kind of cardboard box that I know will tempt me to keep it because it's like, oh, that's a good box. I know that the minute I agree with myself to let it go, I have to tear it up there and then, because otherwise I
Yes.
know that I'll revisit it and decide to keep it or whatever.
That is a quirk that I share.
Yeah.
I share that with you. I do the same thing.
And so, yeah, maybe make it so that you can't make that decision anymore.
Exactly. And whilst, the frames are solid, I won't say they're nice, but they're solid, I would be more happy feeling that cathartic release of smashing them.
That's it, because something I've learned since starting de-hoarding a few years ago is that actually I love tearing up cardboard boxes.
Yes.
It feels like a release and I thoroughly enjoy it. And so I feel like taking a hammer and taking whatever to those.
Oh, yes.
I love it. So, Jan, you have permission to smash them up.
I am going to do that this weekend. They're going to get smashed.
I love it.
I'm all about it. I'm so actually looking forward to smashing it.
Yeah, I'm getting excited vibes from you now at this idea. This is great.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Yep, definitely. That's so much better than my thoughts of probably attempting to remove it and then smashing it up anyway. But this is much more purposeful. This has more
intent.
Yes, has more gravitas, intent. It feels more, it does feel, it makes me feel better. Oh, I've got to turn it over. I can't look at it.
See, and that's exactly why it has to go. It's glowering at you.
I can't turn it. I can't look at it. It's glowering at me. I just can't. Because my sister gave them to me the other day when we were sorting out things at my mum's. Oh, these are yours. Do you want them? I probably should have just said no at that point. But then I had all the thoughts of I don't want my face in the local St. Vinny's. Thank you for giving me permission to smash it up.
So today we are talking about creating our own spaces and touchstones, which we will explain, to help us to manage and feel grounded if we feel overwhelmed or dysregulated. These are items and places that can help our nervous system to calm down. So, Jan, what made you suggest this topic for the podcast?
The reason I wanted to discuss this concept today is to offer listeners ways to find their own tailored strategies to come back to safety and connection as easily as possible wherever they may be, because that's often the case. We can find safety and connection in certain contexts, but not in others. So I thought this would be a great topic. And also, given that listeners with hoarding behaviours have a preference for objects or concrete methods for bringing themselves back into a place of connection, it felt like a useful topic to unpack.
So the idea for this came from the work of Deb Dana, but it felt very similar to some of the preparatory work I did with a therapist when we were building up to EMDR therapy. We spent months creating what she called resources, which were things I could bring to mind or items I could see or hold that helped me to regulate myself if it all got too overwhelming. So Deb's work is based on polyvagal theory. A lot of people find this a really useful way to understand how we react to trauma. There is also criticism of it, especially the physiological side of things. However, whether the science, the physiology is technically correct or not, the principles of polyvagal theory can still be invaluable for those of us who get overwhelmed by feelings, by fear, by trauma, by anything really. And I'm a firm believer in still taking the useful stuff from something, even if the entirety of it isn't perfect. So this concept from Deb Dana is known as a ventral vagal space. Can you explain why having some kind of ventral vagal space or touchstone can be useful for people listening?
Yes, I can. So thanks for mentioning the criticisms of the underlying science of polyvagal theory. Like you, I feel the scientific community is in a bit of a tizzy about the technicalities. It's tomato kind of stuff, I think. But the clinical applications of these principles can be extremely useful for people when they're interacting in the world. So I'm with you. Take what's useful, leave the rest. But first, I just want to briefly come back to summarize the basics of polyvagal theory.
Yes.
Of our nervous system. And you can go back and listen to our very, very first episode together for more info if you want to go back that far in the archives.
And listen to us probably being a bit nervous and a bit like, who's this woman?
Yes, I went back and looked at my notes. I was like, okay, that's a bit stuffy sounding. Anyway, that's all right. So polyvagal theory is all about describing our safety system. The vagus nerve in our body is our kind of communication superhighway, if you like. And it's constantly scanning the environment for safety and danger without conscious thought. It's kind of like a personal surveillance system. So our safety system works like a ladder. And there are 3 evolutionary stages. At the top of the ladder is ventral vagal. This is known as connection. And signs that you're in ventral vagal are when you feel resourceful and able to make decisions, when you're able to engage with others and ask for or offer help, and you're also able to explore options and plans. So this is when, for people who are listening, you're able to sort through items with clarity and impartiality. This is probably how you feel when you start sorting other people's stuff, because you feel like you can be in the frontal lobe, you can feel connected to your executive functions, and you're able to just work through the problem. Next down is sympathetic. This is fight flight. So when our heart's racing, our stomach is in discomfort, we feel agitated, angry, we want to escape. This is when we're in fight flight. Most of us kind of know that idea, that terminology. So this is when we might get a bit defensive when someone suggests throwing something out that they feel is still good or worth something, valuable for some reason. And then the third, on the bottom of the ladder, we have dorsal vagal. This is shut down. This is when we're feeling frozen or numb. Our eyes glaze over when we're doing a particular activity. We can't make decisions. And this is one of the things I do see with clients. They might just be staring at the item but just can't move or decide what they want to do with it, and they just want to flump is what I would call it, really, right? They just want to flump somewhere and think, I can't do this anymore. So as I said, your safety system works like a ladder, but you can get stuck in survival modes, which kind of are that fight, flight, shut down. You can keep flipping between the two without coming up to connection because of past experiences. And this is where trauma comes into it. When you have had significant trauma and you haven't had a chance to kind of know your nervous system, you can find yourself just flipping between those two constantly. So you're not able to come up and feel safe. So with respect to hoarding, I think one of the things is, and we've talked about this before, trauma can make us trust objects over people. So objects are kind of not going to reject you, not going to say mean things to you. We can also often feel unsafe in our space, which is so interesting because we often feel, and I'm often told by people I work with or people I've spoken to, that they feel safe amongst their stuff, But then when I dig deeper, they will often say, I don't really feel safe in my space. And the reason I've made this kind of nest, if you were, is because there's external, dangers that I'm trying to protect myself from. Obviously, this makes us have difficulty making decisions. As I said, we're not connecting with our frontal lobe when we're not in a safe space. And we use acquiring and saving as emotion regulation strategies, like collecting cute things for comfort. After we've experienced a loss, we kind of get out there and buy the Beanie Babies or whatever it might be. So we need to practice to build new patterns, and tackling the clutter, both of the mind, because we do have clutter in our mind, and in the real world, works best when you feel safe and connected. So circling back to the question you originally asked me. I feel like a politician. I'm circling back on what you said previously. People who hoard, in my experience, are huge externalizers. So the way they feel inside and the way their minds work is kind of on display in their space. And Deb Dana, in this latest book that she's written, Polyvagal Practices Anchoring the Self in Safety, uses the analogy of a home to demonstrate the integration of our autonomic nervous system and how those pieces work together. And the irony was not lost on me. It hit me in the face like a frying pan that's been hanging on the wall for 20 years gathering dust in an unusable kitchen. It's just like whack. Okay, let's listen to this quote from Deb. The dorsal vagal system runs the basic utilities of the home. This system works continuously in the background, keeping our basic body systems online and in order. When there is a glitch in the system, we pay attention. When all is running smoothly, the body's functions work automatically. Without the influence of the ventral vagal system, the basic utilities run the empty house, but no one's home. If we are home, the environment is one that brings no comfort, my emphasis. Everything is turned down to the lowest possible settings, enough to keep the air circulating and the pipes from freezing. The environment is just habitable enough to sustain life. Does that sound familiar? This is shutdown mode. This is standby. This is no comforts, just existence. So the sympathetic branch can be thought of as the home's security system, maintaining a range of responses and armed to react to any emergency. So the alarm system is designed to activate an immediate response and then return to standby. So without oversight of the ventral vagal system, the security system receives a steady stream of emergency notifications and continues to sound the alarm. So Deb is talking about our flight-fight response. The alarms go off when we can't get running water or the neighbours knock on the door, for example. Perhaps the landlord demands an inspection. We have to take some action to kind of recalibrate. Unfortunately, many of us just work switching between shutdown and fight-flight mode, as I said. We're merely existing and we only get bursts of energy or sense of purpose when our alarm system is triggered. But to be able to live a full life, we need to be able to connect. We need to be able to come up to safety in ventral vagal state. Deb Dana says that the ventral vagal system allows us to soak in and savour this home we're inhabiting. We can enjoy it as a place to rest and renew by ourselves and as a place to join with friends and family. We feel the basic utilities running in the background. The rhythms of our heart and breath are regulated. We trust that the monitoring system is on standby. The integration of systems allows us to be compassionate, curious about the world we live in, and emotionally and physically connected to the people around us. So, you see, for people who hoard, one of the best ways to bring ourselves into nervous system safety is to create a space that's nourishing and inviting, and it invites that connection and ventral vagal energy. So here's another quote, which again just it was like she'd written it for us. We need to make a space that's filled with signs of safety, spaces that invite us to enter and stay for a time. These spaces are filled with abundance, but this does not mean filled with lots of things.
Ooh.
Quote. So I just read that and I immediately went off and organised to join her course that she's doing. I just went, I'm doing it because it just spoke to me. What Deb means is that feeling of abundance comes from being in the presence of our ventral state. And she kind of suggests we need to find balance between open and filled spaces that brings us, our individual, how we individually feel a sense of abundance.
Most of us who hoard know that it can feel very lonely and isolating. One of the things I get from listeners is that sense of connection, and I hear from you that you get the same from the podcast too. If you come along to a de-hoarding accountability Zoom session, you can find some of that community in real time. Or if that's not possible, by sharing podcast episodes on your social media or with others directly, you can help others to see that they are also not alone, especially those who've never told anyone they hoard. To join a Zoom accountability session, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. To share an episode on social media, just use the share button in whichever podcast app you listen on. Thank you.
So that's talking about the ventral vagal space in our home. Now, touchstones are objects that we can actually carry with us when we leave the safety of our home. So it kind of has these two parts to it, creating that ventral vagal or ventral inspired space at home, but then also having these objects or other kind of things that trigger our senses that we can carry outside with us.
And a woman called Emma Gleedhill described this kind of goal as when we are calm, alert, open, safe, playful, loving, appreciative, and connected. Which sounds lovely.
Doesn't it sound lovely? Doesn't it sound lovely?
Yeah, that's the goal. So how can we create a nook, a shelf, a corner of our home that is filled with this energy to help us to regulate our emotions?
Yes, okay. Well, this is often people who hoard, in my experience, will ask, this is when they'll ask me, where do I start? Like I'm paralyzed. I don't know where to start. What should I do?
That's the question I get the most as well. From listeners, especially new listeners. It's a question I had for a long time. It's an understandable question.
Exactly. Overwhelm is exhausting and leads to that dorsal vagal shutdown. We kind of approach the problem, it's too hard. We don't have the emotional or physical resources. We feel like it needs to be all done or not at all. And that black and white thinking pops up. And I think that's why people who hoard are kind of unable to keep going. They feel that they work so hard, but for no real result. I think this is because they have these ideas about how they'd like their space to be, but they can't realize it quickly enough.
Yeah.
But I think if we can encourage listeners to start with before I learnt about all this ventral inspired spaces stuff, I called a piece of peace, which is just a space to retreat to that feels safe and that has what we need to make plans, organise, talk with friends on the phone, a place of connection, a place to recharge. And I know I have areas in my home that make me panic and stress out. Definitely when I had little kids, I did. But I found that having one space I could just go to and sit quietly with my thoughts helped enormously. But at one stage, all I had was one shelf. It had special items on it that it brought me joy and a sense of abundance. And that was just so grounding. It was one shelf. So I would look at that. I would ignore what was behind me. I would focus on just being with those objects in that space, keeping my mind connected to it. So how do we start? How do we do this? How do we make a space? Obviously, you know me, so I will say we start small. First, we kind of want to look around and see what makes us feel a sense of safety and contentment and warmth. So it might be one object, it might be a chair, it might be a window that, you can sit in front of, looking out to the garden, or perhaps you've got plants or something that you want to be amongst. If there's nowhere or nothing in your home that brings this feeling, think back to your childhood. Was there a place where you felt this warmth and contentment? What is it specifically about those things or spaces that brought you a sense of safety? So really, we just need to contemplate and attempt to kind of think back. If we haven't got somewhere in our home right now, think back to a time when we did have that sense of warmth and safety. And what was it about the space? How did it feel? What was there? So now is the easier part. Look around and see where your shut down, overwhelmed dorsal system is activated. Notice the places and objects around the home that make you feel uneasy or anxious. That's the easy one. Identify what the characteristics are of those things and spaces so that you know what you don't want. Often that can be a place to start. I know what I don't want. It's that. And how can I create a space that is what I do want? But bringing curiosity to what might be possible in your home. Find objects, sense sounds, and bring them together on a shelf or in a corner. Dust and prepare the area and then display those objects. Change the area and track how your nervous system responds. Add another shelf or another space. Track how that makes you feel when the space feels welcome, and stop and actually experience it feeling welcome. Don't worry about all these other things that feel unwelcome and scary, but just focus on that so that you can feel within yourself how it is to connect and feel safe. I think that's really that's really how we can create that shelf or corner in our home.
And what can we then use this space for? Whether it's, like you say, a shelf, a nice view out of the window, ultimately maybe a whole room or maybe part of a room. What can we use that space for?
Well, this is a place to retreat to when we want to feel what they call, what Deb Dana calls safely still, which is that combination of dorsal vagal and ventral vagal, which is this place where you are kind of contemplative. You're not active, but you really are just able to sit with your own thoughts. It's a place to come back to when you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and you think, oh my goodness, when is this ever going to come together? When am I ever going to feel like I'm making a difference? It's there to give you motivation, give you a sense of hope, give you a sense of that you do have the ability to create something that does feel warm and inviting, and make you feel connected. So that's what that space is for. I do think the idea of doing that as almost a first step reduces the likelihood that you will start and then stop pretty much immediately. I think you need something to pull you through, and like values that I bang on about all the time, it's a similar thing. It's pulling you through to see this is what it can be like. This is how my space could be everywhere.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking about that resource thing that I did before EMDR. A really important aspect of that was I had to practice it and practice it and practice it while I felt okay before going to it in a crisis. So I was like, okay, I know I can go there and that's there. And so
yes,
it doesn't have to be something you only use at the worst moments. It can be something you start by using just to get a sense of peace, even when you otherwise feel more or less fine.
And knowing that you can feel the shifts, even if they're a lot less. It's just that, and that's what it's all about. It's getting used to, because often we're so dissociated from our bodies, our sensations, our nervous system, that we shift between these places on the ladder and we don't even really notice. We might all of a sudden discover, hey, I'm really angry, I'm really frustrated or whatever. But most of us just push through onto the next thing. We don't actually stop and observe it. So I think you're really on the money with use it when you're not feeling overwhelmed, when you might just be feeling, he might come home from work and think, I'll sit down with a glass of wine, or if you don't drink, coffee, whatever, sit down and just be in the space. Reflect on how you feel.
Yeah, and that also avoids your safe little space that you've created becoming associated with crisis as well. You don't want to create a mental association with, when I look at that shelf, I feel the worst I felt.
Exactly. Even though it originally was meant to make you feel safe and connected, now it is associated with the stress that preceded it.
Panic attacks or overwhelm
Exactly.
So when I was reading about the touchstone side of things, it made me think of when babies can be absolutely distraught and then they just need to touch for a millisecond or smell a particular item and they are instantly calm.
Yeah.
Is that a similar kind of mechanism?
Yeah, like this is Winnicott's transitional object attachment that we discussed this way back when we did the pod ep on why stuff. So yes, definitely I see touchstones as this external mechanism that can calm our nervous system, identically to soft objects that are used as transitional objects. So babies and toddlers, they can't regulate their emotions or self-soothe. If we are securely attached to our primary caregiver, as per Bowlby's attachment theory, then we go to them when we're hurt or frustrated or sad. The transitional object comes into play when we are beginning to explore the world away from our parent and we realise that there's more than just us and that our caregiver is a separate entity. So children use a transitional object to stand for the caregiver, not replace it, but it can bring that child back to, as you described, bring it back to regularity so quickly, just the way they grab it and they're like, oh, yes, I feel I'm safe. Many of us did not have a secure attachment as a child, and some of us need this type of object to bring us back to regulation as adults. There's no shame in that. Use what works. So it is definitely an identical mechanism to what is occurring in that transitional object attachment with children.
So a lot of us, especially if we've had any kind of therapy or mental health support, will have been told endlessly about like visualizations to calm down.
Yes.
I'm making no comment on that at all. What is it about a physical item we can look at or touch that can be more effective than something we think of or picture?
Yeah. Oh, we've got to remember some of us have no mind's eye and we can't even visualize an object, person, or image. I mean, this is called aphantasia, and 2 to 5% of the population have this characteristic. Some of us don't even have an internal dialogue.
Imagine.
Do you wish that was you?
Oh, yeah.
I wish that was me.
The peace.
You know? Exactly. So, I mean, that's one part of it. Often people can't imagine, can't visualize an object, person, or an image, or whatever it may be. But I also think objects fit with people who hoard, as I said before, and their trust kind of in the concrete. It's about kind of being 3D, the textural cues we receive from it, we engage more of our senses. And also the other thing I think about touchstones being physical objects is that we're able to connect with an item through touch alone, and we can kind of be discreet about it, like perhaps it's a piece of jewelry or a small shell or something, and we can touch these things without kind of feeling self-conscious. So it offers that ease of connection with something without, feeling like you are being weird or odd.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us do it without knowing we're doing it.
Yeah, when I was a teenager and plagued with panic attacks that I didn't know were panic attacks, but they were, several a day, absolutely overwhelming. And somewhere I learnt that lavender was relaxing. The smell of lavender was relaxing. And I got some lavender, like perfume or something, and I used to put that on my sleeve. And so if I started panicking, I would really subtly just like breathe that in. And I think looking back, I think the lavender itself was incidental, but there was something about the safety of knowing I had this on me and nobody needed to know, but it was right there.
Exactly. That is exactly it. And scent, like you just mentioned, scent. I mean, it's even more potent than an object, isn't it? Because the speed at which we evoke memories and the attached emotions, it's like super fast. And that's because our olfactory bulb sends information about smells directly to the limbic system. And, that's central for memory and emotion. But you know that the hippocampus decides a smell is important and it can be remembered indefinitely. So you will probably find that damn lavender will work for you forever.
Yeah.
Possibly doesn't matter that it was lavender. As you said, it was a scent that you connected with this emotion of being calm, being collected, being, in a safe place. You'll remember that forever. So it will always bring that. So this is something I think we need to bring into our spaces and our lives is scent. Use scent for those sorts of things. The other thing is wearing types of clothes and particular items are great touchstones too. And even a blanket that you can wrap around yourself might be a perfect way to bring, safe stillness.
Yeah.
Because it's that blended, it's that blend of, it's an object, but it's also physically warm and feels comforting. It's like having a hot cup of tea and putting your hands around it. That can really bring you back to a state of connection as well. And that's often used in therapy, let's have a hot cup of tea.
Like I don't think hot water bottles ever actually did anything for my period pain. But I think there was something really comforting about curling up in bed with a hot water bottle on my tummy.
Exactly.
I think that more than it actually easing anything.
Yeah, and now, they look like a teddy bear. So it's like doubly comforting.
I've literally got an avocado one over there.
I've got a little bunny rabbit one. It's just a little one, and I love it. I think it's great, but I think those that wearing particular, there is something about wearing certain types of clothes too that can just bring you closer to that calm, collected, connected space.
And even you see people say they always wear a particular ring or a particular necklace, and the panic when they realise they haven't put it on that day.
I had a client. She did not realise how important this necklace was to her until she could not find it. And she spent a whole week looking for it. And she now she understands this, this connection. She just didn't recognise it before. So again, that's why we need to be more observant about what we do, be more connected and noticing these things. Noticing is super important.
Yeah, do we reach for our necklace when we're a bit stressed? Or do we stroke a particular fabric? Or
yes, exactly. Or do we fiddle with our ring? Or do we, like it's very interesting.
So with a touchstone object, we want it to basically transport us to that ventral vagal mindset so that we can take ourselves off high alert or deep distress and ground ourselves. Deb Dana's book also describes these things as anchors, which I liked as imagery. So we've talked a bit about that just now, but what other features a touchstone would need to have to help us to ground ourselves in this way?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be object, clothing, scent, sound even, that offers us some sense of personal meaning to us, that make, that we've got some connection to a sense of safety and comfort. So, you might have, as we just discussed, you might have items that are around you at work or at home that you've already kind of identified, but there may also be things you haven't recognised as being potential touchstones. So it can be anything, but it really does need to offer us that personal meaning, and it has to be able to bring us to that state. And the only way to work that out is to really notice be aware of what's, how you're feeling in your body when you're interacting with objects.
Do you know, I've just had a weird memory. You know, the Queen, the previous Queen, Elizabeth, used to always carry a handbag.
She did.
And that was really weird because she didn't need money, she didn't have keys, she didn't have... But apparently, so they say, that was like a kind of safety object for her almost.
And you notice she would always have her arm often bent with the handbag.
So she had a ventral vagal touchstone, maybe?
Almost like a shield and a connecting her to that. Very much so, very much so. Because it was always the same little, same style handbag. You knew there was nothing in it.
What could she possibly need in her hand?
Exactly.
If she needed a tissue, somebody would bring a tissue.
If she, maybe it had her puffer in it. I'm hoping that it had her, vaporizer or something in there just in case she needed it.
Or a sly pack of cigarettes or something.
A gin and tonic in a mixer or something. I highly respect that. But I think you could very well be right. It might have had things in there. Who knows? It might have had touchstones, further touchstones in there. I don't know. Yeah.
What kind of items might serve this purpose? I know we've mentioned some.
Yeah, like rings, necklaces, maybe a seashell that you've picked up on a particularly lovely visit to the beach, or a stone, a smooth stone. I always like stones. I think they're lovely. A particular perfume, perhaps, or incense, a diffuser. I've worked with people who don't feel like they can do any work unless they have their incense burning, because it's that smell that makes them feel energized and ready to get working. It could be chimes, sounds like tinkling in the breeze, something like that. As I said, an item of dressing. And dopamine dressing is really a thing, like wearing clothes that, lift your mood, colourful stuff or crazy, wacky stuff, whatever.
Sorry, dopamine dressing sounds like something you'd have on a salad.
Well, it could. You could have it on a salad.
Would you like Caesar dressing or dopamine dressing with your...
Caesar dressing or dopamine dressing? I'd always go the
Tomatoes.
dopamine if it was me. I'd be like, yep, bring it on. But yeah, if you want to feel a certain way, clothes can make it happen, right? If you want to feel a bit sophisticated, you just have to whip out something black and end up looking like everybody in Melbourne. Or if you want to be a bit wacky or zany like someone from Sydney, you might wear polka dots or,
And as you witnessed when I had an event to go to last year and was panicking about what to wear, what to wear can also have the opposite effect and can cause immense dysregulation and stress.
Yes. Oh, exactly. It can be a whole other world where you just think, oh my God, I want to just shrink into the shadows. But use your imagination, I reckon. Just,
And some items are almost designed for this, like weighted blankets, for instance.
Yes, exactly.
People swear by them.
Or those cool blankets that aren't actually cool, but they, they don't physically cool you, but they're apparently made of fabric that is, gives you the weight without the temperature, which is something that I kind of look for, because I like to have a weight on my feet when it's hot. I can't sleep without anything on my body. I have to have something on my feet. But I'd also like to suggest a few different things that like you said, that you can be interchangeable to bring you into that ventral vagal state. And also there's these kind of blended states of play, which is ventral vagal and mobilization, that can bring you to that play area where you combine two of those on the ladder, and that's a kind of blended state. Or safely still, which is dorsal and ventral blended. So there's these levels that you can also bring about, connect with through touchstones, etc., or the space that you're in. But the way you can always have something to access when you're not at home, when you're not in your ventral vagal inspired space at home, as you were saying, I know if I'm in a pinch, I know it's there. I know I can smell the lavender. I know that I've got my St. Christopher's medal attached to my bra strap. I don't know. But, those sorts of things, you know that they're there if you do need to attempt to kind of bring yourself, you're slipping down. I'm slipping into shutdown or fight flight, I'm recognizing, oh, look, I'm slipping into that state in a curious way, and then use the touchstone. As you said earlier, practice it when you're in a pretty good state. You're not overwhelmed. You're not having a panic attack, all of that sort of stuff. But practice does make, what do we say, progress, isn't it? Not practice makes perfect anymore, we say.
Yeah.
And you may actually find you can do it without a touchstone. You can do it with just thinking of that touchstone,
Yeah. No, just thinking of when one of my friends was pregnant and do you have Lush shops in Australia? Yeah.
Oh, you can smell it like 3 or 4 streets away.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
And she had a favourite massage bar from Lush.
Mm.
And so she was thinking, I'll get a massage bar for the birth bit so that he can do something useful. But she was really torn because she knew she had a favourite massage bar, but she didn't want the experience of giving birth to wreck her favourite massage bar.
Exactly.
So on the one hand, her favourite smell would have been ideal for giving birth, but would it also then create an association that was too difficult to engage with afterwards? So she ended up, for the birth itself, choosing a second favourite fragrance.
Second favourite fragrance. I like it. So that, you still got your go-to.
Yeah.
You just adjusted slightly, and she probably used that second fragrance a few times, and, yes, exactly. Very smart, very astute.
I've got a favour to ask that could make a big difference. If you've been enjoying the podcast and want to support it, here are some ways you could do it. Consider making a donation. Every pound helps me keep the podcast running. Alternatively, show some love by leaving a review. Your words really mean a lot to me, and they help others to discover the podcast. And do spread the word. Share the episodes with anyone who might benefit from listening. Whether it's a donation, a review, or just sharing, your support keeps me going. Find out more at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. And we're not expected to be, and we're not suggesting anybody should be, in a Zen state of enlightenment all the time.
What? We're not?
Obviously, Jan and I already are, but we know this isn't accessible to most people.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, gosh, we've reached enlightenment years ago, people, years ago.
So in her book, Dana says, the goal is not to be permanently anchored in regulation, but rather to recognise when we are pulled out of regulation and find our way back to safety. Our work is to be able to safely navigate the small, ordinary state shifts that are a part of everyday life and build the flexibility and resilience needed to weather the changes that are more extreme. And there was a few things about this that I liked. One is about when she specifically mentioned recognizing when we're pulled out of regulation, because one of the ways that I finally got on top of my panic attacks maybe 10 years ago was learning to spot the very, very beginnings, because it's a lot easier to talk yourself down at that stage rather than when you don't notice until you're virtually on the floor and then
exactly
pull yourself back. But also I like that she recognised that, of course, small, ordinary state shifts are normal and are what we all go through. So in this kind of realistic daily life where we are not constantly zen and enlightened, can you talk a bit about how we can use these touchstones? or indeed spaces in our homes?
Well, I think, we can wear whatever our touchstone might be. We can make sure that it's kind of accessible to us so we can see it, touch it, wear it. We might have it in our pocket all the time or in a bag or something with us. I mean, perfume, like I remember for me, perfume was really, it takes seconds when I wear Chanel number 19. That's my exam perfume. I come back to like I'm focused, ready for a challenge as soon as I smell that perfume. It's kind of bizarre.
Freshly cut grass takes me to my exams.
Yes.
Because grass cutting time of year was exam time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that bizarre? But it's just about when you recognize that you're, as Deb says, just recognize that ordinary shift. And you may even only need to just think about that touchstone that you've got. I know I've got it if I need it. I know it's there.
Yeah. Reassure yourself it's there. Yeah.
It's just often just reassuring it's there. Exactly. I mean, sounds can be really good as well. Sounds can be something, if you're really in a place, some people are really dysregulated in crowds, for example, or, it's usually when you're outside of your home environment where these switches happen quite often. There's no reason why. That's what headphones are for, that you couldn't have little recording of chimes or birds or whatever it is that...
Or heavy metal, whatever it is that does it for you.
Heavy metal, whatever floats your boat. Just give you that little boost into safety while you're out and about, where you feel not excessively unsafe, but just, hey, I'm feeling a little bit unsure of myself. Why not? And knowing that it's there, even if you don't turn on your headphones, even if you're not, I know it's my backup. It's there if I need it.
Some of the resources I came up with when preparing for EMDR are things I still use now. I still find it instantly calming to watch a lava lamp.
Yes.
To listen to the shipping forecast, which is a specifically British. It's a BBC radio thing that's for decades. I think 3 times a day, they read out a forecast for shipping. And what it actually is, for somebody not on a ship, it's this poetic, rhythmic, beautiful series of words and numbers that mean nothing to me, but just calm me down instantly. Sometimes I revisit nice messages in chats from friends.
That's a nice one. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. Putting on certain pieces of music or particular podcasts. When I stopped smoking, I was given this stop smoking kit. And one of the things was like a twisty fidget toy to keep your hands busy. That soon became something really soothing that I would mess about with and that would help me to ride a craving.
Yes.
There's a woman called Natasha Wilson from Stroud Therapy who had loads of suggestions on her website. I will link to anything we mention in the show notes. Some of those were fidget toy, knitting.
Oh, yes.
I've got a friend who, if she's going to an event she knows she's going to be nervous at, she brings her crochet and just gets on with crocheting.
And you can be still part of the conversations, because most of us who knit or crochet, we can do it without looking.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like she's doing anything weird. Like, it may be unusual to get your crochet out, but it's not wildly,
bonkers.
Odd. Exactly.
No, it's pretty reasonable thing to be doing. Yeah.
Other things she mentioned, moulding clay. I can imagine that could be very grounding, just pummeling some clay.
Yeah.
Jigsaw puzzles.
Yes.
Self-massage, weighted blankets or mats, and also like cats, or stroke your dog, stroke your cat.
Definitely. Animals are just brilliant for bringing you back to connection. It's just like instantaneous. Just looking into their eyes is just...
Yeah.
It transports you to this this sort of place. Didn't people used to call up and listen to the speaking clock to calm down? That was another good one. I remember that.
Yeah, and that is very shipping forecasty. That's very much what the shipping forecast is like.
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember that. Like watching dog, cats or videos. That's another one, like just, you know, if you're feeling really stressed, just something happy, just to sort of give you a bit of a giggle, which will lift you up. Silly putty. That's great because that doesn't get too messy and you can just play with that for hours. My next door neighbour in the 80s, her grandfather was a doctor and he gave her some mercury to play with. I'm not sure that I think that's a good idea, but she used to, it was in a box and she'd just push it around. Bizarre. She's okay. She's okay. And what about those, you know, those semi-precious stone, those rollers that you roll on your face, you put them in the freezer or fridge?
Yeah.
Those are really, like, a lot of people do that as a real, like, you know, sensory experience to calm themselves. What about I think giving yourself a hug, a real squeeze can be good. Yeah. But, you know, if you're in a real fight-flight situation, like, you know, maybe you feel you're heading down that path to panic attack, what did you do? Did you do splash your face with water? The other one is count randomly, can help you move from, you know, from your fight-flight into your frontal lobe, you know, 11, 21, 3, 5, you know, it
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I think because my brain's constantly counting things normally, I think that would add too much
Yes.
chaos to the situation.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I can see that could work if you're not a counter of everything that's happening around you.
Yes.
Another insight into my interesting brain.
Yes, it's very interesting. Yes, are you going to donate it to science? Please do.
And it feels vital to say at this point that this is not... Jan and that hoarder said I could go shopping to buy soothing stuff. I'm afraid. If you have a full house, there will be things in there that can serve this purpose. You can even make your own touchstone item from stuff you've already got, like stitching together fabrics that you find soothing. My phrase of the year last year was make do. And it's amazing how having a focus on making do with what I've already got really did temper a lot of my spending. So tell us a bit about how we can use what we've already got for these touchstones.
You know, I really feel like there is a tendency for all of us not to use what we own. Damn it. You know, we think to ourselves, I might lose it. Oh, how will I feel if that was gone? And, oh, I won't put that on display because it might get broken and, you know, or nothing feels right. I need something new. But this kind of process of finding things you already have in your home and in your memory bank as well that you found soothing or comforting before, or things that you discover kind of bring you comfort as you move around and interact with your possessions. That's part of it. And it does make you a lot more mindful, a lot more aware. So, I mean, spend the time exploring your home and find a number of items, scents, sounds, you know, that make you feel all the feels, you know, whether that's connected and curious or playful, alive, excited, anxious. You could want to feel safely still. I mean, you want to know how you feel when you shut down as well. You want to know how all these things feel. So mess around with them and see how you feel touching and interacting with those objects, and kind of experiment with using them to shift between the states by actually connecting and touching them physically.
And that can help you to discover if there's something that you've always assumed was a soothing object, but that actually causes you anxiety after all.
Isn't that interesting?
Speaking of objects that glower.
Yeah, glowering objects. I'm now all about that. I'm all about that because often I'll see something and I'll not want to throw it out because of, you know, insert random reason here. oh, I've had it for so long, it's obvious that I need to keep it. And then I'll look back at it and I'll go, you know what? I hate that thing.
Yeah.
I think it's damn ugly. And
Yeah.
you know, it's so interesting. But we do not need to buy more things. You know, I would say you already have, you know, what you've already got is already shifting you in and out of those states. You just need to notice. I think that's that's kind of what sums it up, is you just need to notice, because it's happening to you all the time as you're interacting. Where does your gaze kind of rest, and you feel, you know, a little bit of a smile come to your face? That was me in that damn shelf, the only shelf I had in the whole house that was tidy and dusted and looked nice. That was where I rested my eyes. And I think that's part of it. You'll notice when you do find it. But we don't need more stuff. We can get out the sewing machine if we're so, you know, hung up on creating something specific. We've probably got all the craft gear and the rest. It's a bit of a challenge. Find, you know, it's some sort of touchstone that you can create from the things that you already have.
Without buying anything new.
Anything new.
If you've got that stuff, you've got some sewing thread somewhere. Or some glue. Or some
glue.
Yeah.
Or a stapler. Come on. Yeah. You know, we've got what we need. We're very, very resourceful when we need to be. I think we just want the new. We just want the fresh. We just want the straight from the store where all those lights are glaring and it looks amazing. That's what we, you know, are hoping it will solve all of our problems. But really, I think making do, repairing what we already have that we love, we need to kind of focus on those things and edit as much as we can of the excess that doesn't. And this is the whole, I was thinking about this earlier, the whole, does it bring you joy? No, let's not think about it bringing you joy. Does it bring you, you know, to a state of connection and comfort and all of those things? It's not about bringing you joy. It's more about, is it helping with your regulation? And I think that's where Marie Kondo is kind of, you know, she's on the right track, but I think joy is not really so much what it's about. It's more about, does it make you feel safe, connected, comfortable?
What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
I would say gratitude. I would say gratitude is my top one, because we're wired for negativity. We notice all the negative things, but if we can actually pull out gratitude, you know, if we put simplest things, hot shower, you know, warm weather, whatever, I think we really do add a positive spin on life. The other thing is unsubscribing to emails for reducing my anxiety.
I sent you a meme the other day. It was something like, someone said, should I spend 2 seconds unsubscribing from this email, or should I spend 1 second every day for the rest of my life deleting it?
Deleting it. Exactly. And mine had got up to 400 or 500. Like on a Monday, I wouldn't look over the weekend, and I'd go in on Monday and there'd be 400 in my, you know, my random email inbox. I'm like, 400? What? I'm now down to like sort of 40 over the weekend max. And even that is way too many. And I'm sure there's some that I've unsubscribed to that just keep popping up, those darned companies that have their marketing that just keeps spitting out all sorts of different stuff. But that has really reduced my anxiety. I often would not want to sit down at my computer because I knew that I would have this massive, and there was nothing in there I wanted, but it would get me clicking through to other things that I didn't need. That's for sure. So that's my 2 things.
Yeah, I think they're good ones. And it is extra question time. So this is the bit where I ask guests an extra question. It's sometimes a slightly silly one, And Dehoarding Darlings get access to this extra question and the answer. If you would like to become a Dehoarding Darling, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. Back to the pod. So, Jan, if people want to find you online with the ever diminishing number of social media sites that any of us are happy to use, or indeed your website, where can they do so?
Yes, I'm really Instagram at stuff_ology, X at stuff_ology, and Facebook Stuffology Consulting, or Jan at stuffology.com.au. And when you're at the website, stuffology.com.au, sign up for the newsletter. I'm hoping to create a few more new things this year. I figure if I put it out there into the universe, that will kind of motivate me to do so. So keep your eye out for that. But yeah, my newsletter comes out on a Sunday. It's free. And sometimes there's a few half decent things there to whet your appetite.
It is always worth a read.
Thank you.
So, Jan, thank you. Informative and thought-provoking as ever. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you for having me once again. May we take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and listen to this podcast today. I am speaking on the lands of the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge their connection to country, both land and sea, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today.
It's the bit where that hoarder shouts out someone wise.
Shout out this week to the Financial Confessions podcast, where friend of the podcast, Paige Pritchard, is talking about, well, have a listen.
You don't have to believe every thought your brain offers to you, because your brain is not wired for your long-term thriving. Your brain is wired and designed to just seek pleasure in the moment. Like I always say, like, your brain's going to talk to you in a way so that it gets what it wants from you. And what your brain wants from you most times is for you to spend the money, is for you to eat the food, is for you to drink the alcohol. It's just to consume, because that's what gives it the dopamine and the pleasure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, you don't have to believe everything that your brain says. And you also don't have to obey every thought that your brain gives you, right? Challenge it, question it. Where is this coming from? Why is my brain offering me this? And to your point, how is this environment, this external environment, set up to aid in that? Because the marketers and the retailers, they know that about us. They understand that about us. Like, they know what's happening in our brains. They set up their stores, their packaging, their lighting, their design to aid in all of that, to get you to spend more.
I will link, as I always do, to the podcast I'm shouting out in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. And I will also link to the episode of this podcast where Paige Pritchard was a guest talking about overcoming overspending. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast. And then
Now,
sorry. No, go ahead. I thought you'd finished.
No. Now the easier part. Well, I could.
How rude.
Leave you hanging. So now X at stuff_ology. I will get good at this at some stage. And